of women. I'm sure you're all here specifically to see them. At the very end, we have Jane Espenson, who you know from, Battlestar, Warehouse, Husbands, which is an amazing venture that we'll talk a little bit about today.
It's husbandsandseries.com.
Write it down. And we have Liz Tigelaar, obviously Life Unexpected. And we're here with Erica Messer, the showrunner of Criminal Minds. So we're going to kind of talk to them today about, breaking the stereotypes and what it is being a woman working in the industry, and just sort of break down their experiences. So it's always a conversation, and I'm sure you guys, being in the industry and being as established as you are now, have a lot of insights on that. So, is it actually as big of a case when you're in it as people make it on the outside? Have you really had, hardships coming up as a woman writer or producer?
Yeah. In comedy in particular, I think the comedy room being so testosterone-y and rough and tumble, and there's a little bit of a can we make the girl cry atmosphere in some writers' rooms. But in drama, it hasn't been as much of a thing. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I've been on a few dramas where I'm the only woman in the room, or there might be one other woman in the room, and I think it's more, they look at it as big brother, little sister kind of thing, even if you're the same age as them or older. So it is very real.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you get it. It's funny, when you think about it, you don't realize how much kiddo you get. You know what I mean? Sometimes they're just and you're like, and then sometimes I find myself to also be my own worst enemy about it. But I remember being on set. I was shooting my first pilot, and there was a lot that was going on, and there was some stuff that was kind of upsetting, and it was I'm digging my fingernails into my palms, and I'm don't cry. And I'm it's just my go-to move. It's it's just sometimes I feel definitely once I started running a show, I was there's no crying in show running. You're not only when it's canceled are you allowed to cry. Other than that, there is no crying. So I felt like I kind of had to grow up a little bit too, because people put so much onto you and they're so ready. Doing this pilot, I remember being 30, and it was all kind of older men, and it's really intimidating sometimes to try to have to learn to stand your ground. And I feel like running a show is the best training for having to do that, because you have to do it every second of every day, have a million horrible, uncomfortable conversations, and you just learn to stand up for yourself in a different way. Rarely did I cry publicly.
And I also know some men in some positions of authority on TV who regularly go cry in the stairwell in men's rooms. Choosing, sometimes you feel like you have to be tougher than the guys, because sometimes they could get away with that in a way that if you did it would be the girl move. So,
right. Yeah. And what are your survival strategies? At what point did you realize you could maybe stand up to them is the wrong word, but that you could stand your ground, and how did you do that? And has it been successful for you?
I've never really become a great stand your ground person. I avoid the fight and just do the fight on the page. It's if you just don't take the note or don't just put out the page, that's the page you want them to shoot, and just keep putting out that page till they shoot it. I try to avoid the fights and have the fights on paper. But there are definitely better ways to do it than I do it.
No, I think that's smart. I feel for me, I think a lot of it was believing it myself, a little bit being I can do this and I deserve to be here, and I don't know, I noticed earlier on in my career there was a lot of that feeling of I'm so grateful, I have a pilot, I'm so lucky, and it was just not a little girl thing, but it was yay, and then you kind of get walked all over and you're like, no, dude, I have a pilot. Like, we're shooting this shit. Like, I'm in charge of it. Like, this is how it's happening. And you have to kind of believe it yourself a little bit. Like, I think that's what it was with me. And so by the time, we were in series on Life Unexpected, it was like, yeah, this is what we're doing. Like, nobody would ever kind of put those different personalities together because that so wasn't kind of who I was anymore. It's like, it's kind of come of age in your own way, I feel like.
Yeah, I think both of you guys have really good points. And I would equate it, show running, to parenting in a way. And you're ridiculously protective of this show that you've either created or you've inherited. And you know what's best. So normally I would have avoided conflict in situations like this, but when you absolutely know the right answer and somebody's challenging you on that, you're like, but actually no, this is how it's going to be said and this is how it's going to be done, and I don't think my character would say that. And it's like, well, actually they do. They say it right here. So, it's a little bit being, it's being a mom in a way. And I think that whether you're physically a mom or not, that is one thing that females have on their side. They have a protective nature about them, and loyal and very defensive of their own. And I think that however we come into that, that's something that's a real strength that women showrunners have. And I don't know if people have really pinpointed that's what it is, but I found that for myself, and in talking to other female showrunners, it's like it's very much how you run a household or run your kids' lives. You're ridiculously efficient. You don't put up with bullshit, and it's because you know what's best for your baby, your show.
Yeah, I didn't feel that until Husbands, until it was a thing that I had co-created, and then I knew the right answer. With other shows that I inherited, I didn't have that confidence, and I think that is a huge difference. I think that may be the reason why we're seeing more and more women creators in the world of online shows, because they can come in with that confidence of, I created this, I know absolutely the right answer, and you don't get run over by a network or studio or other creative entities within the machine. So yeah, then that's the place you can go be the mom of your show. Although I tend to think that instinct is a human instinct. It's just labeled differently in women and men. Men are strong protectors. That's why they do it. Women are moms. That's why they do it. Maybe it's the same thing. Maybe it's the exact same.
Yeah, I think you're right. That was wrong for me to label it like that. But I think that there's whatever it is. But even a strong man could say something, a strong woman says something, and she's a bitch.
Right.
Oh, but he's just being a strong man.
Right.
So that definitely exists, and I think it does exist with the same things I said about the traits for women and mothers could be said about men and fathers, but they handle it very differently. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of like alpha male stuff that goes on, and it doesn't. I mean, I would say most of the time it doesn't exist when women are running the show.
Yeah.
I don't have time for it. It's like I don't have time for that. There's a lot to do. I want to sleep tonight, so let's get this done.
Let's do it. It is funny. I was just thinking about one time I had gotten kind of like a talking to or whatever. Like an executive came over, and of course I'm like such an idiot because like I was like. They were like, so-and-so is going to stop by for lunch. And I was like, that's weird, all the way to Santa Monica. But I'm like, that's nice, like just stopping by, whatever. So, and I'm like not thinking about it. Anyway, he comes to my office and he sits down and he was like, so. And I'm like, what's happening? And he was just like, is everything going all right, like in your personal life? And I was just like, and I'm like, I'm like, do not cry, do not cry. Like, it's happening right now, don't start crying. And I'm like, what? And he's like, he was like, last year you seemed so like bubbly and perky. And he's like, this year you seem like you're fighting and like angry. And I was like, I feel angry. I was like, and I was saying like, you basically, whatever, anyway. I was like, yeah, I'm a little angry. So I was like, yeah, I feel angry. I feel very threatened and like, you're trying to make my show be something different. I feel angry. But I was sitting there in that moment thinking, if I were a guy, would anyone ever come into my office and be like, how are you feeling? Is everything okay in your personal life? And I'm like,
You're not as perky as mine.
you're not say that. I'm like, you're not as quirky. You're trying to cancel my show. I don't know. You know, but I was like, and then of course I was just like, you know, and I was like, no, I was like, and then of course I started crying. I was like super tough. I had like a good 5 minutes of being like, no, well, I really don't appreciate this and blah blah blah. And then I was like, and then I tried to go, just so you know, I'm not crying about this. It's not something that has nothing to do with this. And I'm like your personal. I'm like, no, I'm lying. I thought we were having lunch. Where's lunch? I'm hungry. No, I'm hungry. I'm angry. But it's very weird, like all of a sudden, how someone is approaching you and talking to you, and you're kind of, I mean, in the moment I was like, oh, okay, you know, whatever, but it was only when I thought about it, I'm like, that would never happen to a man. It's so patronizing and so insulting. And you would, and probably if I were a man, he wouldn't have even had the balls to drive over to ask me that. You know, I mean, it was crazy. So
And that's the thing that happened when you were in charge, when you were in power, and you were at a mature place in your career. The things that happen when you are the baby writer, when you're 22 or 28 or whatever, that I went in once, I had been on sitcoms for a couple of years, I hadn't been staffed, so this was a desperate year of unemployment, and I got a meeting to go be a freelancer on a show, and I went in and I was talking with the showrunner, and he asked about my background in linguistics, and I was talking about an interesting phenomenon in linguistics where even in English, sometimes if you just hum the tonality of the phrase, you can understand the phrase, and he said, give me an example, and I said, So you should be able to hear, I don't know, and he said, oh yeah, I totally heard, I want sex.
no.
Silence. And I'm not kidding. I wrote the thing and I didn't have sex with him, so it all worked out. But like, wow. Yeah. I mean, that was some time ago, but still, I think a lot of that could easily happen now. I mean, there's probably 20-something girls out there right now trying to get started in business, facing stuff like that, and you just have to know that this is a great business, it's a great job, it's the best job in the world. You battle through those things, and you get to the point you can be crying in a showrunner's office and freelancing.
Exactly.
That really is surprising, though, because I think I came into this panel today thinking now you guys have gotten up to these showrunner, creator levels, so what were the hardships you went through, but still now, in this position you are now, you're still battling this.
Oh.
Yeah, and even, I mean, I was just on a panel right before this for people that had created stuff, and it was all men. I mean, Julie Plex like double booked, but I'm like, where is she? You know what I mean? I'm like, why is she not here? But and you feel, your instinct is to feel smaller and shrinky. You're like, but it's a thing. I mean, this is a weird tangent, but does anyone ever watch Locked Up Abroad? I think it's very interesting, and I don't know if this point's gonna fly, but the thing on Locked Up Abroad is it's basically about people who have gone into other countries, now they're smuggling drugs back into the country, and they end up getting caught and getting locked up abroad. It sucks. But basically, it's so interesting because with the women, like the men, they're like, yeah, I'll smuggle drugs for a 2-week vacation to Mexico, great, and they do, and they get caught. The women, they always know, right before they do it, they're like, I don't want to do it anymore. I don't want to do it. This is bad. This is going to go badly. But the reason that they don't not do it is because they've promised someone, they've committed to doing it, and they feel like they can't take that back. Anyway, that's all. It's just a weird thing that I've noticed. Like, you get in these weird things where your instincts are battling what you've said you would do as a woman. I don't know. I find it to be a female thing, but maybe it's not. But I just noticed in my own life. Like, I'll get in a car with like a drunk cab driver, and I'll be like, I don't want to tell him to pull over, but I'm like, he's drunk. It's so hard to stand up for yourself and to just listen to your own instinct and be like, this isn't right. This is wrong. I have to do something. And I notice I fight it within myself all the time of like, I don't want to embarrass anybody. I don't want anyone to feel bad. Like, I want everyone to be happy, and I don't want to be the person that doesn't make them. And you want to be liked, and then, when you're in charge, you have to face all those things, and you have to, you can't strap the drugs and duct it into your leg and just walk on through. You have to be like, wait, people, this is gonna be bad. wrong. This could go wrong. Anyway, it's kind of doesn't quite work, but get what I mean.
I think there is a disease to please out there. I mean, I don't know if it's a female thing or what, but I think that a lot of us have it in, you know, those who are writing or acting or whatever. There's a degree of you need some kind of acceptance, and I think that kind of goes into this, like, this whole idea of, but I said I would, and
Right.
I don't want to really back out,
Right,
and,
right.
and that would make them unhappy, but it's like, but it would make you dead. Like, trust that. But yeah, there is sort of that disease to please that kind of runs.
And look what we're doing now. Like, we're here to talk about, like, being strong women, and we're spending all the time going, like, here's what we're doing wrong. We're not doing anything wrong. We're getting it done. And
It's true.
And,
Right.
Yeah.
But this is why I love working with women, though. It is the difference. I mean, you can look at it on the negative side, but it's like, I feel like we're also quick to, you know, kind of, well, this is stupid, but like, when I was doing, created this character, Kate, on Life Unexpected, when I first handed it in, they were like, this woman is completely unlikable. She doesn't want to get married and have kids. Like, they basically, the note I got was that she was unlikable and no one would want to watch her. Of course, I felt like I had just written myself, so now I felt like they were actually telling me I was unlikable, and I'm like, I think she's very likable and quirky. You know, whatever. And I remember getting the note, they were like, people like women who kind of don't take things out on other people, they turn it inward on themselves. And I was like an eating disorder, or like, what are you talking about? But that was the bad side of it, this network note. But I think the good side of it is that I do feel like we're all pretty I feel like you could be, whatever, this is a huge generalization, but I haven't worked with a lot of men who are sitting around doing like a lot of introspection on their interpersonal skills, on how they made you feel, on how you felt when they gave you notes, on did they say anything nice to you, like whatever it is. I've never really encountered that. There's been one guy in my career, Mark Perry, he's the only man who's ever told me good job on a script. I've been on a lot of shows, written a ton of episodes, and usually you hand something in and nobody says a word. It's like one guy. Whereas I feel like when I work with women, they're so much more giving and ready to share credit and to say how, you know, wonderful something is, or I just feel more valued as a whole. But that's to say, I don't know that I've ever worked with a female showrunner. That's more just women who come into your office and say, like, I read your script, great job, like that was really great, or well, no one's gonna come in your office and tell your script sucked, but I'm not meaning to say I write all good scripts or anything, I'm just saying, like, people, you know, I just find that that's how women are, or you can have these kind of, I mean, I have a producing partner who's, we get in fights as if we were married. I mean, we will literally just be like, oh my God, like we go at it, and then we're like, I'm really sorry that we fought. Like, I feel really bad about what happened. Or like, there's never been a man who's ever come into my office to speak about like how they might have spoken to me or how we might have, what happened. It just doesn't happen that way. So, I don't know, there's something about working with women, there is something maternal about it, obviously, that it feels more nurturing to me.
Supportive.
I
think it's supportive, and I think it comes down to the fact that we've all been in rooms where we're the only woman, or there might be one other. So when there's another woman, you just naturally want to like suss that one out. Like, is this because there's some women who aren't women's women, you know, who are guy girls or whatever they call it. But so when you find one or two, if you're lucky, that are like lovely and like-minded and all that, you do sort of gravitate and you support and you lift up and you pop your head in and say, I know you were up till 2 and you did a great job. And, you know, because you're aware that it's doing to others. You would want that to happen to you.
Yeah.
And whether it does or not, it doesn't limit you from sharing that with somebody else.
Yeah.
Well, can you guys, to the same point, can you talk a little about being a woman in the writer's room, specifically, you know, earlier in your career, did you feel that lack of feminine energy? And then now that you have the choice to hire the writers, do you make it a point to bring women in and to make sure that it's more evenly distributed?
I haven't really been in a position of hiring a staff, but absolutely the comedy writers room where I started my career, like I was saying, yeah, those are rooms where it is about shouting out a joke in the moment, very quickly, very loudly, and really about breaking the room up. There are guys who never get a joke on the page, but they're valuable in the writer's room because they keep the room laughing. And what's going to make a room full of comedy writers laugh? It's going to be sort of the grossest thing, the rapiest joke, as you and so it could be a very uncomfortable place. But more and more, like, there's the Disney ABC Writers Fellowship, which you guys should all know about if you're aspiring writers. It's a good place for new writers in town. And more I see young women, particularly teams of young women as comedy writers. And the fact that they're all going through this program and all getting placed means the numbers, I would hope, would start to change. And these rooms will start to be more balanced and will start to get, I would hope, a better energy, a better feel, a better attitude coming out of the room, which may be why we're starting to see comedies that have a little more heart to them.
Yeah.
Have you made it a point, you two who are hiring writers, to bring the women in?
Yeah, absolutely. My second in command, a co-pilot, my right hand, Janine Sherman-Berrois is an amazing writer-producer. She started off in comedies, then was on Third Watch and ER, the last few years of ER before she came to Criminal Minds. And again, she's not a mother, the most efficient woman I know. She's very, she keeps that ship running, she keeps the writer's room going. If I'm not in there, I'm like Stretch Armstrong, which, you know, you're in post and you're on set, you're dealing with 10 other things. But, and then the next in line after her is Sharon Lee Watson, and then and then we have like a story editor level woman. So there's 4 women and 4 men on Criminal Minds, and that's like first time ever, because before it was me and one other woman. So it's nice to, you know, I think we're heard a little bit more in the, hey, let's not do an episode where it's co-eds again. How about that? Like, let's not do some research on the guys that hurt everyone, you know? And, because, you know, it just quickly, you know, again, I mean, it sort of goes to everything that women and children are victimized the most. And so our show depicts reality in a lot of ways. So when you look at that, it's like your real choice here is male and female victims. That's all you got. And the reality is 90% of the time it's females. But, you know, I've found many instances where there's people who are equal opportunity offenders. So I try to tell those stories so we're not like victimizing women anymore than it is in reality.
I think equality of villainy is an interesting area. Like every underrepresented group sort of goes to this thing where they have to be paragons, and then when you get enough representation on TV, you can start having villains. So we've